Okay. I can't actually get all five. Did you get it? Okay.
That's right. Oh, I'll tell you. I don't know. I'm wondering about that. Thing there. What?
Yeah. So those first two are senators. Okay. And then the next three are senators. Okay. If you want to put that in there.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it was up there.
Laura. And Laura Ogden?
Victor needs a spot.
You can sit right there.
Good morning. It looks like our line has managed to file in, and I would like to get us started as close to as on time as possible because we do want to respect everybody's time. I'm Corey Cantrell. I am a member of the League of Women Voters here in Sioux City, and I will be the moderator for today's town hall. The League of Women Voters of Sioux City, along with Inclusive Sioux City and Siouxland Cares, is proud to sponsor today's legislative town hall. The Iowa legislature is, what, a little over halfway through your session? 3/4. 3/4. Oh my goodness, time flies. They're 3/4 of the way through the session, and they just have a few weeks to go. We look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you to the Sioux City Public Museum for providing this space for the town halls. This fall, the League of Women Voters of Sioux City will be sponsoring the Candidates Forum for City Council and School Board elections. Please watch for more information. The League of Women Voters of Sioux City is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed, active, and civil participation in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. We do not endorse any candidates or political parties. For those watching on Facebook Live, please feel free to submit questions online. We do have someone who is monitoring that. I would like to introduce our co-sponsors and allow them to say a few words before we get started. So for Inclusive Sioux City, please welcome Victor Diaz-Galindo.
Galindo, yeah.
Galindo, sorry.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for being here with us today, and we're so excited to co-sponsor this event. The Inclusive Sioux City Advisory Committee is a really important committee, and I think it's a really special one. Like the Vice Chair, Jim Young, says, that the strength really is in each member and the work that they do within the community. And I'm looking forward to see how this community grows with the City Council and in everything that we do together. I think we're co-sponsoring because this forum is really important. I think providing access and information is empowering, and so knowing our candidates and what they're here to do and the work that they want to do with this power is important. important, right? But thank you so much.
And from Siouxland Cares, Rachel Lundgren, who is being joined by Medhani Nagasi, a student from East High School and a member of the Mayor's Youth Commission.
Hi there, my name is Rachel Lundgren, as she said. So Siouxland Cares, we're a community coalition. Historically, we've really looked at preventing substance use and bullying in youth. We've expanded to look at the well-being of youth and families all across Siouxland. One thing we really enjoy doing is facilitating the Mayor's Youth Commission. You can see we have some Mayor's Youth Commission timers over here. Thank you for joining us. And we love to work with these young people who are really involved in the community. One thing we've added recently is our DEI committee for our Mayor's Youth Commission and Young Ambassadors. So I invited Medhani here, who was elected by his peers, to be the director for the youth of the DEI committee, just to share a little bit about it today. And thank you for letting us co-sponsor.
Nearly 4 years ago, I moved to Iowa, and at first I felt disconnected from my community. So when I heard about Mayor's Youth Commission and DEI, I jumped on the train. And ever since, I've really gotten involved in my community, and activities like this have allowed me to truly connect with people, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our format today will consist of opening statements by our representatives and then questions from the public, either in person or over Facebook.
And then we will allow you closing statements. Probably they'll be very short. Hopefully we will have covered everything that you would like to tell us about today. For your answers to the questions, we've asked you to keep your answers to 90 seconds. I know sometimes that's tough, and we are flexible. So we do ask questioners to try and keep your questions short and to not come up here to make a speech, but to ask a question and then to move on so that we can get in as many questions as possible this morning. Our Mayor Youth Commission members who will be helping today are Adelaide Gassaway, from North High School, Maria McGowan from Heeland, and Jesse Anderson from East High. So we invited Senators Kevin Alons and Senator Rocky DeWitt, Representative Jacob Boston, Representative Ken Carlson, Representative Bob Henderson, and Representative J.D. Schulten. Mr. Boston did send his regrets. He had a scheduling conflict, but we welcome all of you here today and thank you for your public service. Yeah, we can call for applause. So, I'll give you 2 minutes for opening statements. Please give us your impressions of what has been accomplished so far this session and what it is you're trying to finish up in the last quarter of the session. Yes? Okay. All right. And we'll just start here and go straight down the line.
All right. Well, welcome. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'm Kevin Alons, a new senator in Senate District 7.
Could you pull the microphone closer? There you go.
It's not picking me up. So, hello, Kevin Alons, new senator in Senate District 7. So, first time I made it to the forum, I had a couple of conflicts prior, but I represent a pretty good-sized district, a rural district primarily, but also parts of Sioux City. So, I've got all of Winona County, good part of Woodbury, except for like upward part of Sioux City, so Morningside and Sergeant Bluff, and then a good part of Cherokee and part of Plymouth as well. So, a lot of learning that's happened, at least for me, being new to the Senate, and I've been involved in the process, I guess, to a degree, but really a lot of learning about how the process works and getting to know people, learning all the different committees and the topics and everything. It's been a pretty active session. We've passed quite a few things, and I know you've discussed some of those topics already in the past, and look forward to talking to you about that as well as some of the new topics. But I serve on the Veterans Affairs, Appropriations, Health and Human Services, which has been certainly the busiest one for me so far. Veterans Affairs, Appropriations, Health and Human Services, Technology, and International Relations, and I'm missing one. Oh, I said Appropriations already. So Appropriations is obviously going to get real busy here shortly as we start working on the budget for the year. So aside from all the different topics that we've discussed, the budget's going to be a pretty big deal. And HHS in particular is other than education, which we've already largely addressed, is going to be a lot of work and a lot of time. So I'm looking forward to that, learning quite a bit, and just weighing in on that part. So I think I'll pass it on and just wait for questions to see what you have to say.
Hi, Senator Rocky DeWitt. I live in Lawton, but I do represent probably about the northern 3/4 of Sioux City. Like Kevin says, it's been a steep learning curve trying to learn all the senators and personalities of, what their priorities are. There's no shortage of opinions down there, but there's 50 of us, only 50 of us, as opposed to 100 on the other side of the building. But no, it's been interesting. I do sit on commerce, transportation, judiciary, and natural resources, all things that are, everybody's got an interest in them, but near and dear. So again, I kind of got a sore throat. I apologize if I start getting scratchy or whatever, but judiciary is by far the busiest one for me so far this year. Natural resources have had some milder, if you will, bills. Commerce has had some that have been, I won't say heated, but a little bit controversial in some aspects. But it's been a good time. It's been a learning curve, and I think it's something that everybody should try at some point. So, thank you.
My name is Bob Henderson. I serve as a representative from District 2 in the House of Representatives, which is essentially the northern part of Sioux City, and it goes all the way east past Lawton, almost to Mobile. I serve on 3 committees: the Transportation Committee, Public Safety Committee, as well as local government. I also serve on the standing subcommittee for appropriations for education as well. It has been an extraordinarily busy session. We are headed toward making certain that the budget is passed. That's going to be our main issue, at least for the next few weeks. This is, perhaps some of you don't know what this means, but I'll just tell you what it is, and that is it's a second funnel week. If bills do not make it through committee this week, they will not make it to the floor to be enacted on for legislation. So that always proves to be a very busy week, and that's what we have here. So I'll pass the mic over to Ken Carlson. By the way, Ken and Kevin, I think, have the largest territories for their respective districts than anybody in the state. So with that, just direct all your questions to them.
Good morning. It's good to be here. I thank you for the opportunity. I've not been able to get to the earlier ones because of conflicts. You're in demand by a lot of different groups and towns. And as Bob pointed out, our district is quite large. District 13 is what I represent, which is all of Monona County, the majority of the rural part of Woodbury County, and as Kevin said, a big chunk of Cherokee and Plymouth County is what I cover. I am a rookie, like everyone up here on the stage is a rookie, and the expression has not been shared with you yet, so I'm going to. You're first down there. It's like trying to take a little drink of water out of a 4-inch fire engine hose. The information just comes at you like you would not believe. It gets to be very, very frustrating. I want to just remind everyone, if you didn't see me out and about, I'm a constitutional conservative Christian, and I've made no bones about it. That's what has directed me as I have made decisions on how to vote. I went down there with no agenda, social or otherwise. I was going down there to learn and to do everything I could for the constituents of District 13. I serve on the Ag Committee, Veterans Affairs, Natural Resources, and Economic Development and Technology would be the 4 that I was assigned to be a part of. As Bob has already mentioned, or Representative Henderson I probably should call in this formal setting, the budget is going to be a big one that's going to finish out our term, our first year. Property tax is going to be talked about as well. And then any number of smaller things that might come up as we go along. So again, thank you for this opportunity. Appreciate it.
All right, my name is J.D. Schulten. I represent House District 1, which is, as I consider it, West 7th to Riverside, Stone Park to Grandview Park, and a little bit around there. So we are all new members here. I am the lone Democrat on here, and so being down there, being a new member is at a disadvantage, and being in the minority is a double whammy. So that's where I'm at down there. I appreciate, thank you League of Women Voters for having us. I feel like this is the type of democracy that we should all engage in, where we ask questions to our elected officials. I serve on the Agriculture Committee, Commerce, Economic Development, Technology, Natural Resources with Ken, or Representative Carlson, sorry. And my subcommittee is on economic development for the budget. So.
Thank you. I believe we have a question that was submitted ahead of time to start with, and then we will ask anyone who wants to ask questions to line up over here. The mic is here. There are wipes there if you would like to wipe it down before you use it. You can ask a question and then proceed back to your seat. So go ahead and start us off.
Okay, my name is Laura Mez, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters. My job today is to read questions that people send in, so they're not necessarily my questions. This question is from Katie Colleen. The Senate recently passed Senate File 516, a bill that makes it more difficult for privately owned land to become available as public land, example for trails, parks, wildlife areas, in partnership with conservative organizations. To the House reps, if this comes out of the House Environmental Protection Agency, will you vote for or against, and explain? And then to the senators, did you vote in favor or against, and explain why?
Okay, so House members, any of you on that committee? Okay, so
I'll
your
start.
choice who starts
We
then.
can kind of go back and forth.
Okay.
So my understanding is that this went into what is it, Environmental Protection Subcommittee first, and they weren't going to pass it, so then it got moved to a different committee, and that's, I believe, where we're at today with it. I'm not in favor of this bill as it is. That's kind of my understanding of where we're at in the process. You know, when we talk to on natural resources, we've talked to a lot of hunters and folks, and we're getting less and less land to hunt. And I think this is going to be one of those things that goes in the wrong direction when it comes to nature and things like that. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, here's my penny's worth. That was supposed to be it. Never mind. I have not seen the bill yet, and I want to explain something to you. And this, I think I'm going to be saying this for everybody that is up here. I mentioned the fire hose earlier, and I was one of those who tried his absolute best to keep track of everything that was going on, what was coming out, and that is an impossibility. And so I talked to several people who were, I would call experts, who've been down there for 3, 4, 5 terms, and I said, what do you do about this? And they said, here is what you have got to focus on. You focus on what is personally, what you feel strongly about personally, and then what your committees are. And so I have tried to do that, and as a result, I'm not going to try to kid anybody. I focus on what is happening on those 4 committees, and until something comes to one of those committees, I am at a loss how to answer some of the questions that may come this direction. Not trying to make excuses, but that's the decision that I have made. So with regards to this particular bill, one of the things that I've been hearing quite often, and it's already in current code, is that there are quite a number of people who are concerned that the DNR is supposed to go out and own 10% of the state of Iowa. It says that in the code. Now, I don't know how long the DNR has been in existence, but they are up to...
Go ahead and finish your statement.
Oh, well, I didn't know how trustworthy...
Go ahead. Finish your sentence.
I'll pay more attention then, sorry. They are up to 1.5%, however long they've been in a committee or a function of the government. So it's going to be impossible for them to ever get to 10% of the land available. There's just not that much money out there. So that's the only thing I'm aware of right now. Sorry. Whoops.
That's all right. I've had the opportunity to read the bill. I've had a couple of correspondences with people who have expressed their interest in it and objection, and as well as their favor to it. And so my familiarity with it is just beginning. I'm really undecided on what to do, because the first time I'll have a chance to do anything will be when it gets to, or if it gets to the floor of the House. But my general impression, first of all, because I read the code that it applies to, is there's not a lot of distinction in it, with the exception of that small case where it talks about the amount of land that can be given back into the private. I'm not sure that that's going to affect things too much. The only change, the major change in it, is it adds a lot of language for trails, which in about 1984 or 85, when the original code was written, did not have trails in it. Now of course we have trails to be concerned with.
Per the bill, I did vote in favor of it. Part of the bill's language was what we want to call cleanup and better clarification on some of the language in there. There was, as I think Ken said, there's 1.5%. There is still the equation of landowners' rights and DNR. It's still unclear to me on some of these issues, on how some of this works for taking land out of crop production, and that is a big issue. So I want to urge caution. I should say I'm using as extreme caution as what I can on some of these bills, especially landowners' rights and taking land out of crop production.
So I'm not on this committee either. I did vote for, it was Senate File 516, and I did look at it and kind of hear both sides of it. And the target was in there. I mean, the target had actually already been obsoleted. There was a 10% target for land, I think, owned by DNR, or essentially that. But it was set to a date that had already passed, so that would be, I guess, kind of a cleanup. Basically, I think in the end, it's trying to strike a balance between land owned, that's public land by the state, and land that is, and in the process of that, displacing the opportunity for a farmer, a young farmer, or whatever, to have access also to purchase land. So that's really, I think, the key is trying to strike a balance. And obviously, different people have different ideas what the balance should be, but that was the intent. That's the reason why I supported it. Was I felt like in the end it was trying to strike a balance between those two objectives. And obviously, I represent a pretty agricultural part of the state. So I mean, the whole state is agricultural, but my district in particular has obviously really got a lot of emphasis on agriculture. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm John Gray. I live at 302 Jones Street, number 609. I'm actually here to talk about Senate File 516 and why I'm opposed to it. I'm a member of the board of the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation. We study a lot and help promote trails, parks, and recreation. Here's my concern, and I won't follow up on this, but this bill came up before the Environmental Protection Committee. It was voted down. Okay, that decision was made, and had that decision been held up, as Mr. Henderson said, it would not go through the funnel. But there's some sort of workaround or walk around this. So now it's gone to a different committee, I think it's called the State Governmental Committee. To me, that sounds unfair. And this is a question only for the senators, not for the House representatives. How can that be fair? When one committee says it's not going to go through, it's the committee assigned to, and now they have this workaround. It doesn't seem fair to me. That's my question.
John, I'm going to have to say I kind of agree with you. I don't know what the parameters were. I wasn't part of that caucus, and I was trying to avoid the backdoor thing that it kind of sounds like happened here. I truly don't have an explanation. I did not realize that happened. Some of these committees that we sit on, I keep getting questions, friends, family, constituents, all of them. where are you at on this? And I'm like, you know what, I have truly only heard bits and pieces because I'm not on those committees, or you know, those Commerce, Transportation, et cetera. So some of that stuff, to Mr. Carlson's point, is drinking from a fire hose. I'm trying to talk to different senators. I try and talk to Kevin every day, and I don't mind calling him Kevin. But I try and call on several of them. I talk to leadership, but is trying to just keep in touch with those from across the spectrum. That I was unaware of, so I apologize. I just don't have an answer for you.
I can give an answer too.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, in the end of the day, leadership does control. Leadership controls what gets considered, and where it gets assigned is a part of that. And so it is. It's just, for better or for worse, it's part of that process. I guess in the end, you have different personalities. At the end, it's 50 individual representatives, in this case senators, and I guess the decision was made that the committee, I guess the environmental, I forget the name, the committee.
Environmental Protection Committee, yeah.
Anyway, I guess that committee is made up of people that they felt were not as supportive or didn't have a different perspective or didn't even maybe want to look at the bill the other committee did. And that certainly has happened with other bills as well. I mean, it's sometimes, I guess for leadership, or as an individual, sometimes it works in your favor and sometimes not as much. In this case, not as much.
I appreciate the work you do, and when we see stuff like that happening, we'll try to let you know.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you.
One of the other things that would cause that, we're going into a funnel week, which means there's a plethora of bills that have to be attended to if they're going to make it to the floor of either chamber. And a lot of times what leadership will do, and I know you're opposed to the bill, but what leadership might take a look at is the work that a particular committee has to do, and they just find that there's way too many for them to have to be able to get done. So they'll find another committee that would be somewhat responsible, somewhat in that sense. I'm not sure that's why that turning, but that could be a reason as well. And so leadership will do that. They'll take a look at a bill and say, well, I think it's worthy of debate. You know, we'll put it in another committee.
I'll be quick, but that's not the case for the Environmental Protection Committee, because I think they barely met. They haven't had too many things pass through there. It wasn't going to pass through it. I know that all the people on that on that committee had a meeting with one of the agencies, and it wasn't going to pass through there. And so when leadership wants something to pass, they'll find a way to get it passed. And state government is where the most likely is.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. My name is Karen Heidman, and I'm here because of a concern I have over SF 478. This bill has passed the Senate along partisan lines, so Mr. DeWitt and Mr. Allens have voted for this, and it's now in the House. This bill severely limits the state auditor's watchdog role in overseeing the spending of tax dollars. The auditor could access documents of an agency to be audited only if that agency agrees to it. The bill also eliminates the possibility of judicial review, so the auditor can't go to the courts with an appeal. The agency could vary everything, and there would be no accountability for taxpayer expenditures. A former Comptroller General of the United States has warned that if this bill is passed and signed by the governor, Iowa could lose hundreds of millions of dollars if a federal agency asks for proof of judicious spending of federal funds and the auditor is unable to prove that because he can't access the records. Even the American Legislative Exchange Council says that government needs more oversight than this. Imagine it.
Okay, I don't want to cut you off, but
Okay.
if you have a question, I'd really like you to ask a question because we have lots of people.
All right, this is my question. For the senators who voted for this bill and for the representatives about to vote, my question is this. What is so important to hide that you are willing to forfeit that much money in order to maintain secrecy.
Should we start at the other end of the table this time? Okay, let's just come down this way.
All right. On that bill, I can see the concern, but prior to this going through the Senate, the auditor had absolutely no discretion, or I should say no limits on when he could start and when he could end. So basically, this is, again, one of those clarification issues. What actually prompts an audit? Can he just go on a fishing expedition? He or she go on a fishing expedition? And or when does it end? Is it because when I hear the letters IRS or those kind of things, it makes me kind of pucker, because I just know that if they want to find something, they will find something. I don't agree that this limits the auditor's sway. On the other side of that, it was put out on the media that the auditor reached out to every senator, and I did not get contacted by the auditor. So I don't know where some of this information is coming from, but we are there to clarify and clean up some of the language.
Yeah, I guess the comment had been made, I guess prior to this, and this is, I think the discussion was before both of us were in the Senate, or actually any of us were in the legislature, but there was an inquiry about what limitations the auditor had, or felt or perceived that he had. And his comment was basically, because it was dealing with this question of, well, when and what would justify the start or the end of an audit. And his basically expressed limitations on what he understood his limitations to be were of all time and resources. In other words, whatever I feel, whatever records I want to uncover, whatever data I want to look at, and we're really thinking, I think, quite a bit about personal records, right? So maybe health records or other kinds of data about an individual. And this bill was an attempt to add some guardrails. And I understand that a lot of the language that the bill is based on is federal guidance, or at least guidance that the states are using. So the bill was amended it was amended late in the process. I mean, so it started off there was some language that was added. But in the end, I guess we'll see what the House does with it, because obviously it has only made it through one chamber. But it was in response to the fact that the auditor had almost no limitations on the ability to discover, even on individual citizens in the state. And that obviously seems to be almost unlimited power.
So I'll give the Democratic perspective of this, is that in statewide elected officials, this is the one Democrat. And so we're very much, I'll be honest, I haven't read the bill. It hasn't come for any of my committees, so I don't know what's in there. But I do know that when it comes to like the realignment, the governor's realignment bill that was passed, the AG's office got more power, and that's the first time the Republicans have held the AG's office in over 40 years. The amount of things that they narrowed the agencies from 36 to 16, is that
16 or
17? 17. And several of the independent agencies got moved underneath, and we added serving at the pleasure of the governor so much that we jokingly on the Democratic side offer an amendment saying that should be our state motto. But when it comes to auditing, it's our taxpayer dollars. We saw with school vouchers, we're giving an undisclosed amount with no auditing services. There's no reporting when it comes to how much money we give to the school vouchers. And so this is just kind of a dangerous perspective that we're going through on the Democratic side. So
I have not seen the bill, and I've only received one email so far on it, so I am a total blank. Sorry.
So email him.
Yeah, I've had a cursory reading of the bill, but it has not come up for any votes that I have to cast either way on it, so I'm really kind of undecided. I don't know all the details on it yet. However, my first impression was that the the materials or the information that would be restricted from the auditor would be of personal nature that would be, in many cases, unrelated to the issue that's being audited. And so that was my impression as to why, that was done. So I mean, that's where I am.
Okay, thank you.
Bernie Scalero. We just came from the Education Legislative Forum, so I don't have any education questions. This question has to do with Senate Joint Resolution 7, and I'm wondering if somebody can speak to it, if it's still live, if it's, and what the intent is, because I'm hearing it's across a lot of states. And the Senate Joint Resolution 7 basically says it's a joint resolution calling for an Article 5 convention in order to propose amendments to the Constitution of the United States that impose fiscal restraints, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the number of terms that a person may serve in Congress. I'm not so opposed to limiting terms of people serving in Congress, but I do have some major concerns about what this bill is, or what this is really saying, and what the intent is. So if anybody has information on it and can speak to it, I would welcome it.
Any of you familiar with this?
I think we're all familiar with it.
Okay.
It's a bombarding from either side of the issue, and I'm going to tell you I'm going over, but for your little pink signs. It is a very contentious issue. Yes, Convention of States has happened before. It is, if we were to pass the resolution, my understanding is that then the Senate or the legislature can only appoint a certain amount of people, like 3 people. Those 3 people represent the state. So if 2 of them vote yay and 1 of them votes nay, then that is still 1 vote in the majority. I'm going to get really deep in the weeds here because some of this is pretty confusing. But understand that they can only vote on and talk about one issue. So if there is an amendment that wants to be, or that we want to have addressed, say your term limits, that is the only thing they could talk about. And should they come back and try to open up another issue, they can actually be held, to my understanding, they can actually be held civilly and criminally responsible for varying from the issues that they were sent there for. Okay? Now, at one point, I think there was 30, it was 1 state shy of actually going to a constitutional convention. Now I understand that a couple of states have backed off. So it's kind of an ever-evolving thing. I don't know yet. I'm still trying to study it and learn as much as I can. I have talked to some people on both sides of the issue that are very, very educated on how it works. When I first got there, the emails started coming fast and furious. My issue was that I was confused. I thought that once they got to a con-con, that they could actually open up the entire Constitution. And what I've learned since then is that is not the case. Okay? Is there a danger to it? Depends on who you ask. Is there benefits to it? Depends on what you want, right? So am I against term limits? Actually, I'm not. But I do, however, think that the voters are the ultimate term limiters. So sometimes you might not have much to pick from. And whatever the case may be, but as I understand it, there are certain issues, points, whatever, that they do want to add an amendment for. But again, my understanding is that it is extremely limited in scope of what can be even discussed and or voted on. Does that help?
Who would like to add to that?
I would add this. I am convinced that using the Constitution will not damage the Constitution. Those guys that put that thing together are extremely intelligent. So using the Constitution will not damage the Constitution. To Yeah, I was gonna say that. To Rocky's point, we're not gonna have anything run away, we're not gonna have anything happen out of the ordinary, because it takes 34 states to even get a convention. And then once that convention agrees on any one of those 3 topics that Rocky mentioned, it takes 38 states to pass their suggestions. And so if something happens with the 34 states in the convention, well, guess what the 38 states can do? Say no, we don't want this, and it's done, it's over with. So I'm in favor of it. I'm very frustrated with our federal government, thank you, and they don't seem to be able to control it themselves, so I think we need to put it in our hands and see if we can't get their attention to do something on our end. After all, this is government for whom? The people, and by the people, and so forth and so on. So those are just my quick comments. Thank you.
I can't add a whole lot to it. It is that you've heard already, except my only concern with Convention of States, I don't think that it poses a danger to our Constitution for the reasons that Representative Carlson just said, but my only concern is could we be spending a whole lot of energy to do something that's not enforceable and should be enforced by our current Constitution? And you know, that's where the dilemma is for me. I just don't know whether that's the case, although there's been a good case made for this, that the mere threat of a convention of states when presented to the federal government might change the way that they are doing things. That would be what I'd say.
Yeah, I think one thing a lot of us can agree in this room is that we're very frustrated with what's happening at the federal level and the lack of progress, I think. You know, when I ran for Congress, that talked about a lot about term limits, and before we have term limits, I would much, we need some sort of campaign finance reform, because if we have term limits, then who ultimately has the power there? And it's the lobbyists who will always be there. And that's one thing where, like I mentioned at the very beginning of this, where like this is what democracy should look like, but the reality is when we go down to the Capitol, who's talking to us a lot is the lobbyists. And so we have these events at night, and I mentioned this I think last month, that we go to a lot. There's a lot of special interest stuff where there's they provide some food and some drinks, and it's a good way for us to be equated with each other. But at the end of the day, you think about in 10 years, are we going to be there? Because they're still going to be there. So then who ends up running this state? And so that's something that any way we can get campaign finance reform, any way we can get like overturning Citizens United, so it does get back to a government of the people, by the people, for the people. That's what I want to go. That's the direction I'm headed in.
So obviously we've heard about a lot of different topics about or aspects of a convention of states or a constitutional convention. And if you read Article 5, it has to do with amending the Constitution, obviously, and there's essentially a sentence or two that talks about this calling of a convention where you make this call. And so, as it's already been mentioned, you have to have 34 states that would make the request. There's a lot of debate, though. It's really not well defined. It seems like it was added on at the last minute, and that's really what gives me pause about the process. Is it's so vaguely defined, right? I mean, you're calling the state. It's actually you make the invocation by the state with this with a resolution, and then it's actually called by Congress, and then whatever delegates are assigned represent. They have one vote. So all of the delegates for each state has one vote. But it's a convention. It's a constitutional convention, and I think really the part that's unknown is what authority. As we've heard, people have said, "Oh no, there's no way." You'll be limited by the call, whatever. And in this case, there's an organization that's really advocating for this convention, and they're recommending that every state that makes this request use the exact same language, and then therefore that's going to be what limits the convention's scope and what it can cover. But that's not really spelled out. It seems like that's based on precedent or understanding of how it happened at the first convention, like in 1787, right? And again, they're talking about precedent. They're talking about opinions of a judge from a Supreme Court justice or whatever. And I'm just not I don't feel like it's set in stone that this thing could not exceed its authority and therefore make deeper changes in the Constitution that I think we might strongly want to resist. So those are frankly my concerns.
Okay, it sounds like there's a lot of thought being put into this. Could we just see a show of hands, those of you who, if you had the vote tomorrow, you would vote in favor? Okay, all right. Those of you, and the rest of you are undecided is what I'm hearing from you. Okay, all right, thank you very much. That was very informative.
Does a person have a chance to say something the second time?
I'm looking at our
that's
line,
fine.
I'm looking at our time.
That's fine, that's
So
fine.
I would like to move on,
That's
okay?
fine.
Thank
Sure.
you. Go ahead.
This kind of goes into my question a little bit. So like, as with any person, it is always difficult to not let our own personal lived experiences and values influence our work. However, as an ambassador of your constituents and districts, what do you actively do to ensure that your work here amplifies your constituents' voices and not solely your own?
Okay, who would like to start with that? All right, Mr. Carlson, I'm going to call on you since I didn't let you finish last time.
This is a completely different subject now.
Can you tell that I am a teacher?
And so was I. So, and by the way, I'm a retired farmer who had 12 years of teaching experience, just for the fun of it. Granted, I've got my own personal opinions about anything and everything that comes up down there. Okay? You can't get away from that. Number two, I spend a lot of time on my phone, not because I'm terribly interested in what's going on my phone, but I get lots of information from lots of different people out there. And believe it or not, I do read them all, and those that I think are worth answering, I will answer. So I weigh what all of my constituents have to say to me in that regard. And so when I get that information, and then any forums like this, and people come up to me and say, hey, what do you think about this? This is my thought, so forth and so on. I try to put all those things together and come up with a sound answer to the decision that needs to be made. That's what I try to do. Is that a fair answer? Is that?
Sure. That's
No. I mean, is that what you're after? Is that what you're after as an answer?
Yeah.
No, my question was, what do you actively do? And that's what you're
Act well, that's what I actively do.
Yeah.
Okay, so good now. All right, thank you.
I go down there and obviously like Ken says, we all have our own personal thoughts. Again, you can't escape that. My personal philosophy is this. If my constituents want me to, for whatever reason, they want to abolish the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution, flat no. I took an oath to support and support the Constitution, end of story. If it's something that I can't discern that there is a direct attachment to the Constitution, then I will still have my own personal beliefs, yes, but when I've got 63,000 people that I represent on the north three-fourths of Sioux City, and they're overwhelmingly coming at me with position X on topic B, whatever, then I do what the constituents are asking me to do. So I will not violate the Constitution, end of story.
I'll just give more of an example. There was a construction company here in town that reached out to me about last session they shortened the unemployment benefits. And it really affects them, and luckily we're having a little bit of a warm March, otherwise they wouldn't have gotten a lot of their folks back. So this is an example where, like, I hear from them, I go and try and find answers, I offered amendments to bills, I've tried to get stuff passed to help them, but unfortunately, like being in the minority, being a freshman, you don't have a lot of power, and so just stuff like that happened. Yesterday I was talking with folks who are federally funded, but they get their money from the state, and they're getting shortchanged on their paychecks and benefits. And so this is something I'm going down there and trying to find. And so, I mean, when it comes to votes and stuff like that, we all have stuff, but if you do have concerns that affect you, reach out to us, because there's a lot of stuff that, like, we don't know about, and there's so many things down there, but we can try and dig and give information on it. I'll say that our Democratic staff that helps us is absolutely amazing, and I think Republicans the same They have so much institutional knowledge, but they have so much, okay, this is where you can find the answer if we can. So.
As far as, so I guess for me, first and foremost, just being transparent up front, you know, when you run, you explain what your core beliefs are. Because in the end, you obviously can't appease or please every constituent, or 60,000 plus people. You can't simply just take a poll and number one, you'll never know what the true consensus is. I mean, the election is one thing, so being transparent up front with what your values are, so when people vote, they know kind of what they're getting and from the core principles, I think is key. And then just trying to be a student and continue to read and study and learn. And then here, like you said, everybody said, just listening to what constituents have to say. And you go into this with core values, right? And to that whole point of to let people know what you believe. But as I'm finding out rather quickly, the issues are never quite that clear cut. So you have to make a lot of those choices on smaller issues. And a lot of those issues that we deal with at the state level aren't so primary, they're not so idealistic. So yeah, then you really just have to weigh the pros and the cons and seek out both the lobbyists, your fellow legislators, and your constituents for just to better fully understand the issue. And then you just have to make a decision. And again, it's all going to be guided by those core values that you try to be always transparent about.
Doc Henderson, do you have anything to add? I apologize. I should be calling you representative. But I called you Doc for I don't know how many years.
I'll answer anything if you feed me.
I haven't done that yet.
What my dilemma, but what I face all the time are the constituents that I have. But I want to make sure that you understand what I mean by that. I represent District 2, which I already explained what that is. But I also feel like I represent a larger than that district, and that would be perhaps all Sioux City to some extent. But I also represent individuals, individual matters, and then I also have to represent the state. And so when issues come up, I have to weigh those things as to which is the most important. For example, I think that it would probably be a fairly decent vote for a 0% income tax here in this area, because we face the problems we do with South Dakota having a 0% income tax. That would not be a good thing for the state right now, because it would change the way that our revenue comes in. We wouldn't be able to do the things that we would do. We just faced an issue in the House that would have guaranteed a representative from the rural areas of certain districts on the supervisors, okay? And you can make an argument that that should happen because we're primarily a rural state, you see. But if that same bill had come up and I was serving in the New Jersey legislature, I doubt if I would have voted for it, because there's not much rural there. You understand the difference? So I have to weigh that. I have to weigh those things. That might be an advantageous one in a place in South Jersey that has some rural areas, but for the entire state, it would not have been a good idea. So there's all those things to be considered.
Thank you.
I thought I'd stop seeing you.
Well, first of all, representatives, senators, thank you so much just for your service to the state of Iowa. I know it takes a lot of courage and boldness to stand strong and represent your constituents well. I just want to ask a question regarding Senate File 315, which allows small farms to sell raw milk. And I wanted to...
Can you not hear?
No, what's his name?
Oh, what's your name?
Oh, Isaac Shaven.
Isaac Shaven, thank you.
And I want to thank Senator Alongs and Senator DeWitt for supporting it, and just ask the three representatives, where are we at on that?
I don't know if that bill's come up yet, has it?
I don't think it's.
I mean, I've seen the bill and I've talked to some people who are in favor of it, so I'd have to see the bill completely. But I don't, you know, I grew up drinking raw milk and fed my kids some raw milk. Farmer used to say, "This is for your dog, right?" I'd say no. But anyhow, and I spent some time with dairy farmers in northwest Iowa, and not a one of them does not feed their kids raw milk. You know, it just happens. I believe that, I think that, I mean, personally, I would think that that should be a favored option, but I haven't seen the bill, so I don't know exactly how it works.
So, this got, I'm on agriculture, and I believe this got brought up in agriculture, and the day that it was supposed to be voted on, we broke off into our caucuses, and it got dropped. So I don't have information why it got dropped, because the Republicans in there decided, or, well, it wasn't going to pass if things get dropped. So that's kind of where we're at.
Just to specify kind of what the bill does, it basically allows small farms to sell raw milk.
Yeah.
And they have to have a 10 cattle limit and periodic testing.
Yeah, sure.
10 critter. It could be goats and whatever too. And about 3% of the folks that want to, if I may,
Yeah.
about 3% of the milk is sold as raw. We decided to call it freedom milk. Because, and I'll just tell you, my personal opinion is there's X amount of people, to Bob's point, you're giving this to your dog, right? Well, okay, at that time it was illegal to sell it for human consumption. As long as, and it can't be sold in a retail environment. You can't go to Hy-Vee or Fairway and buy it. It has to be sold. It cannot, and I think there's just some other language. It can be delivered, but it's got to be a maximum of 10 cows, goats, I forget whatever general milking. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just not. If you want to drink raw milk and you know that's what you're buying, then so be it. I don't have a problem with that. You can argue that, well, there's X amount of people who are already buying it and drinking it anyway, so we might as well legalize it. Well, I don't quite agree with that argument, because there's 10% of the people who are smoking marijuana and whatnot, we might as well legalize it. No, that's not the point. The point is that if it's a choice and you know what you're buying, I don't have a problem with it. So I did vote for it, yes.
So Representative Carlson, it's in it's in the Agricultural Committee which you serve on, is that correct?
You had to remember that, didn't you?
I did. Nothing wrong with my memory yet.
So yeah, yes, I am on the Ag Committee, and I'm one of those dirty Republicans that JD was talking about. They went to caucus, and when they came back, and fair or not, it's part of the process. The chairman of the committee said, we're not going to bring it up, and that's where.
And at that point,
now,
since it did not pass out of your committee, the bill is dead for this session?
No, because now it has been brought back. I mean,
Okay.
Nothing is ever dead down there. It may smell bad, but it's never dead, okay? But I want to share with you, since it's been brought up, why I am going to be against allowing the sale of raw milk. How many of you are familiar with mad cow disease? How many of you remember one beef came over from Canada and it had mad cow disease? What happened to the cattle market? It fell all to pieces. 30 seconds already? So, my point is this. If we get listeria in lettuce, who gets blamed? Every lettuce producer in the country, until they get it straightened around. That is my concern with raw milk. If we have a family or several people get sick because it's raw milk, the entire milk industry is going to take a hit until they get it straightened around. That's the way people in this country seem to react. Time is up. I would make this suggestion. This is legal in the state of Iowa. People who want raw milk, don't have a farm, share a cow with a farmer. Then get all the raw milk that you would ever want. Those are my thoughts on raw milk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bob Fritzmeyer, and my concern is with it's Senate File 548, and this would tax forest reservations. Right now, the Iowa Code gives property tax exemptions for woodlands, which are called forest reservations, that are at least 2 acres and have not less than 200 trees per acre. And there's also an exemption for fruit tree reservations. This bill that has been introduced in the Iowa Senate would repeal the property tax exemption on forest reservations and begin assessing property taxes on the land. And I'm a member of the Sierra Club here in Northwest Iowa, and our state chapter of the Sierra Club has opposed this bill, but I would like to know right now, if this came before you, would you vote yes or no, just as it is?
So should we just take a show of hands and then you can give your reasons?
I think it's a little bit tough because, like, I don't.
You don't know the bill?
Yeah, I don't know.
Have any of you worked on it, or do you know which committee it's in? You said it was Senate file?
I think it's Ways and Means.
Ways and Means?
I think it's Ways and Means.
Okay. So have any of you heard anything about that? Okay.
To answer his question, what little I know about it, just assuming that, no offense, but you know what you're talking about, and like that, I would probably oppose it.
Go ahead.
I find it interesting, and all the things that you brought up this morning, they all begin with Senate file.
So do you want me to start with the senators every time? Okay. Sorry we don't have an answer. Maybe you could send them an email and get a response back.
No.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Good morning. Kevin Green, Director at Sun District Health Department, Lawton resident. I'm here to talk about, I think, the realignment sort of passage legislation that's already come through. As a local public health agency, I don't know the implications coming down from the state and the whole realignment thing. I'm not against efficiencies, but one of the things that I want to ask, and since you're all in your sort of freshman terms related to this, to plant the seed of a process, because I've been told 2 different supposed savings amount that will be the result of this realignment. Past history dictates that when 7 years ago, when Medicaid privatization occurred, it was done for cost containment, cost savings. I've never seen a report that clearly articulates and identifies the amount of financial savings that action took. Although I am well aware of limitation of services, challenges in reimbursements, et cetera, provided by providers. And I overlay this with the aspect of, is there any cleanup legislation that will ever be done when savings is the main motivation for doing some of the realignments, that we're going to be expecting 2, 3, 5-year progress reports on truly what happened, but an overlay of what it's done to impact of services to our residents. And the reason why I'm interested in this is because I know in population growth, we lag in double digits behind our neighboring states. And when we have a severe workforce shortage and we're not bringing new people in, because they're not relocating here, is there some impacting result with reduction of services, et cetera? So I'm interested in just kind of hearing your thoughts, if that's ever going to become a norm, or do we have to sit, what's the process for that?
So the question, just to make it clear, you're asking if there will be a follow-up report, or just more general comments on the realignment itself?
Actually, what I'm looking at, is there going to be an accountability report that comes out to us as taxpayers that documents basically not only the financial, but I think we have to look at the service side too, because that creates the quality of life.
Well, I'll just back up and make a couple comments about the realignment bill in general. I mean, obviously, it's a very, very large bill, 1,600-page bill that refactors quite a bit. And there was a few comments about it before, where it tries to bring some level of, it tries to streamline operating a little closer.
Yes,
it tries
you say you need to talk slower.
it tries to. Right now, the governor has like 37 cabinet heads that she has to report. They have to report to her, and it's quite unwieldy. But it's not going to eliminate. It sounds like it will eliminate some positions that are mostly unfilled through attrition. So I guess I don't see a significant reduction in services. The funding savings that I've seen, I think, are really secondary to just the organization and the redundancy that the governor currently sees. So they have cited cost savings, but I don't think I guess I haven't perceived that that's been the primary thing. I've heard like 100 million. I've heard people say, well, you should probably count on half of that. It's maybe that's, just, it's hard, a little hard to predict how much money will be saved, and it might be kind of hard to measure as well, just because there are multiple initiatives that are underway right now. And how do you know what we would have spent, right? So I mean, those are kind of hard to gauge, but there are some things about the reorg that change who people report to, and that was alluded to as well, that people have had some concerns about, and those are probably the things that I am the most paying attention to, just because of the implications that those changes have. But
thank you.
I'll say this, is that when we were trying to go through everything and see what's going to be cost savings, there's over 500 state government jobs that are not filled currently, and we assume that those are just going to, that's the cost savings, is the salaries right there. And so it's going to mean that state employees are going to have to do more with less, and that's a lot of what we saw in our caucus that talked about. The one area that I think got brought up on the floor quite heavily in the House was the Department of the Blind, and the idea that they will no longer need a blind person to be part of the board to pick that, to pick whoever should lead it. And it's one of those things where, like education was when I was in high school, we were first in the nation for, and they say the common phrase right now is, if you're blind, you need to be blind in Iowa, because we have such great services for the blind. And so that's one area where we're very cautious about, and we'll be following.
Anyone else? Because I think the question is more on the accountability. Is there going to be any kind of follow-up?
One thing for certain is that the realignment bill, or now the act, is a first step. Okay, over the period of 40 years, state government ballooned to the point where we had 37 agencies, more than any other state, more than the federal government has under its executive branch. And so this alignment, this realignment, was primarily an administrative realignment, not a policy realignment. Although, having said that, there are certain things that have to change a little bit with policy. The savings, as Representative Schulten mentioned, with over 500 positions not filled, we're not asking those agencies to ask more of their people, because they haven't filled them anyhow. So as a result of it, they were unnecessary. And what happened was that those agencies got the money for those FTEs, and then if they didn't fill the positions, they'd use the money for something else. And so that was, and that's part of the efficiency, is what it turns out. The other thing that has been said already too is, I don't know if you all understand what it means to say to the pleasure of the governor, or for that matter, to the pleasure of anybody. And that simply means that those employees are at-will employees. If they're not doing the job, then they can be released from that and new ones hired. However, in the instance with the governor, virtually all of those that are hired are subject to legislative approval. So this is not a power grab by the governor, even though it's been posed that way. My fellow representative would call it that. It's not. That's important to know. As to the issue with the blind, the governor's already reappointed the same person, because they're the best qualified person to lead that agency. And this would, and so just because someone is blind doesn't mean they're qualified to lead an agency. So that's what this does. Now, obviously, if they're the best qualified and they're blind, that may be that would be good. So I just want to clear some of those things up.
Okay, I'm looking at our time, and I think realistically, we're going to be able to get through 3, maybe 4 more questions. So just be aware, if you're in line, we'll get you if we can. But realistically,
probably 3 or 4 more questions, so.
And I'll stay right. I'm Beth Morton, and I didn't come with a question, so you can put the timer on me.
There you go.
And you may decide whether you want to respond or not. I just want to leave a message.
Okay.
Having been a resident of Iowa for 46 years, we have really come to love this state. We're very concerned about what's happening in our state. And I'm not pointing to one party or the other. And I know as a legislator, thank you all for your service. It's not easy work. But I think back in our history, and we were able to resolve differences. And we didn't come in and say, well, this is my party's position, and I'm in the majority, so this is what will happen. We worked out our differences, and then we agreed to disagree. And I've never been in the legislature, so I don't know this, but I'm asking you to think about that in your work for the benefit of all of us who live in this state and are not directly involved. So if they want to increase the role of the auditor, my first reaction is, well, I'm used to that. We had auditors, and they came in, and you had to deal with that. The EPA situation, listening to that, they did not consider that. As members of the legislature, maybe you have to say, listen, that committee said no. Let's move on to something else in our state. I think back to Christopher Rance, elected Republican legislator who brought forward the concept of the 1% sales tax in Sioux City. And that was controversial. And there were people that were for it, people that were against it within his own party. Today we have all new schools in our community. It was a value-added concept that changed our lives. And so you have a tough job, I know that. But I think it's so important if you'll listen to others and get those perspectives. When you're dealing with unemployment in the poor, talk to the poor. I touch the poor every week. I hear their stories. Some legislator told me we got to get rid of the fraud, and I'm saying, get rid of the root cause of the fraud. Don't hurt the others. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adana Ninsky, and I'm going to be talking about non-medical switching. Some of you may be more part of that. Please support HF 626 in the Senate. I urge you to support HF 626 to protect Iowa patients from having their covered medications changed by their insurance companies for non-medical reasons in the middle of a year plan. Non-medical switching can be harmful and dangerous for people with mental health conditions. Please support legislation that would prohibit non-medical switching. Yeah.
We passed that this week in the House.
Yes.
So it's going to go down.
So it's going to go in the Senate.
Yeah, this is one of the best bills. I think they've been trying to do it for, I've been told there's a history behind this bill, and they've been trying to do it for a while. And we have 2 doctors as freshman Democrats, and they've been upfront with everything, and they said that this is one of the best things we've passed this entire session.
So that's the good news.
That's the good news.
That's good to hear.
Yes.
Okay, so senators, are you familiar with this bill?
So,
Okay.
yeah.
And have you had a chance to look at it yet?
It's kind of a funny thing. Even I went down there with the word lobbyist as something I wanted to spit after I said the word. But I will tell you, I have never met a more professional group of people. Anybody else chime in if you feel like it, but a lobbyist will call us out and ask us, they may or may not ask us where we stand on it, but they give us their version of it. And then most of the time I'll ask, so what's the other guy going to say? I kind of try and put it back on them. I have not seen the sleaze or the lies or the whatever. Obviously, we cannot take contributions for campaigns during our session, but yes, I have heard of it. To kind of cut it short, I have heard of it. I'm undecided on it because I see merits to both sides. And to partially answer your question, if the medication does the same thing, and it doesn't always, I get that. So I'm still a little up in the air. I won't even say I'm leaning one direction or the other, but I'm clean it.
I'm just looking here, it looks like it's assigned to subcommittee and it has not, I don't think it's held to subcommittee in the Senate yet. So I haven't actually read this bill. It is an HHS, so I'm not assigned to the subcommittee. I would say that I lean towards supporting this. I do want to read the bill, but just as a concept, I agree with what you're asking.
Okay, thank you. I have one other bill, real quickly. Please oppose HF 613. This bill places burdens on individuals who receive basic benefits such as food assistance and Medicaid. Please do not make it more difficult for Iowans with mental health conditions to access basic services and supports. I know, just listening this morning, you were commenting on how much bureaucracy and red tape that the governor is trying to eliminate some of this in our state. And this would be adding more verifications and eligibility requirements would be detrimental to those that have mental health issues. I could go on further.
I really would like to let someone else have a turn. Thank you.
Yes. Does anybody want to comment with if they would be, just say a yes or no?
Are you familiar with this bill?
Did you guys pass that?
I'm trying to figure that out. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
That's-
We have yet.
It's coming up soon, though.
Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Sorry. My name is Trisha Eichminger.
I'm going to move it so you can talk. There you go.
Thank you. In regards to future federal funding and infrastructure, Iowa has an option to utilize road swap. From my understanding, road swap is used to strip certain protections and prevailing wages for labor workers. I've had the honor of speaking with U.S. Representative Veenstra, who showed an openness to address this issue. My question is, are you supportive of ending road swap to help keep the money in Iowa and by Iowa while honoring our union brothers and sisters for their hard work by keeping those protections in place?
Are you familiar with this road swap?
Right.
Really?
Is there a bill number?
There's not a bill number. I think it's just the general.
Okay.
Yeah. So
this is not something that is up for consideration now, but maybe something.
we are definitely organizing to address the issue of road swap.
Okay.
So from what my understanding is that federal funding can come to Iowa. Iowa has the option to keep the federal requirements or guidelines, but they also use road swap to take those protections away, so Davis-Bacon laws, prevailing wages, things like that. So then therefore, that doesn't really support our local labor unions. So, and then that opens the market to out-of-state workers, right? And so they come in and they'll construct these jobs, and we really don't see the benefit of that. So basically what I would want to know if you are supportive of ending road swap, so therefore that money stays in Iowa and that our union members are supported.
I'm not opposed to unions, just there it is. But I thought there was already language in place on the federal side that they could not use, or they had to use prevailing wage if there's federal money in place. So,
but this is
Iowa.
This is substituting. So it is happening. So yeah, this is.
So this is a workaround to get out of the federal requirements to pay prevailing wages, and is it occurring here in Iowa? Is that what you're saying?
I believe so.
Yeah, it is occurring here in Iowa, and so they are asking for legislation that would prevent that from occurring in Iowa.
Or just to show, yes, that would be correct.
I don't know, gentlemen, given where we are in the legislature, is it possible for a bill to be proposed at this point if it has not already gone through the funnels?
it's too late.
There we go.
No, it's appropriations.
It's appropriations.
So-
Has the bill?
We could.
appropriations could do it.
If leadership wanted to, but I
Okay.
can guarantee Republican leadership will not
So,
want to do this.
yeah, okay.
My
So gentlemen who are part of the Republican Party that is the party in power,
All right, I apologize.
then would you be willing
Having more
to
Republican
address
members
this
than
issue
here.
with your leadership?
I think the question is really honestly if you are open to have that dialogue. I know that Feenstra had showed his support in wanting to address that. So I think that would be what I'm looking for is, are you willing to support that and have that conversation?
And I think at this point, they don't have enough information, so I'm gonna
I
go
will
on
judge
to
you.
the
Okay,
next,
that's okay.
to the
Thank
next
you.
question, and I would suggest that you send them an email with the details so that they can make informed decisions.
Again, Laura Mez, League of Women Voters. I have a question from someone on Facebook. Can you hear me?
Microphone.
Okay.
Okay.
Take a step.
Take a step. Oh,
There you
right
go.
here. Okay, so this is from Jackie Stellish. She wants to ask Senators Alon and DeWitt. She says, you put your name on 2 anti-trans bills, one regulating bathrooms. Our governor signed them in private saying she didn't like them. Why is this a priority when we have a worker shortage, crumbling infrastructure, and now second in the nation for cancer?
So not a specific bill, just kind of the topic, those 2 bills?
General, I think she wants to know why are these bills against anti-trans more important than all of these other issues that seem more important to people, like crumbling infrastructure, worker shortage.
So, I mean, first off, I would say just because the number one, we didn't set the agenda, right? So we obviously supported those because, or I'll speak for myself, I supported those bills because I think I've heard from enough constituents and people have concerns about the topic that it warrants attention, right? It isn't, those other issues aren't the only issues that matter, but I just think in the end, those issues can't be ignored anymore. They've risen to the point where voices have spoken out, and I think there needs to be some guardrails in that part of our culture.
I guess I'm not sure how to answer the question at all, because they were bills that came up. The constituents that contacted me were in favor of, or asked me to vote in the way that I did, in the overwhelming numbers. And as far as your crumbling infrastructure and cancer, I don't recall seeing bills that address those. So I think you're trying to ask me, why am I not addressing something that's not, your person is trying to ask me a question that I can't vote on something if it's not a bill. So I think it's kind of a moot point.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna, since that was directed just to the senator, so I'm gonna move on because I think we have time for one more question if I'm gonna give you time for closing statements. So one more quick question, quick question.
My name is Steve Corey, and this is addressing HF 565, which just passed last week, regarding, has to do with the CO2 pipelines that are being proposed across our state by 3 different pipeline companies. One, BlackRock owned, one of the largest PE investment groups in the world, Summit Energy, Bruce Rastetter, who's been sprinkling money all over the place in South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, amongst many politicians and of our representatives. 565 passed the House with a majority. A lot of the stuff was stripped out of it the night before that had teeth in it, but it's still a step in the right direction. I'm understanding, I spent an hour and a half on a team call the other night with former Congressman Steve King, who's deep into this topic, very, very well versed. And as far as he's concerned, it will die, and I've heard this already in the Senate before the final. Our governor is for these pipelines, and I also learned there's a third part of this, which is the manufacturing of methanol on top of everything else. And these pipeline companies are looking at that as a massive, and the carbon tax credits profit center, and the theft or taking of private property for private property for private profit. And I'm urging everybody, please. I've told that
Is there a question here?
The question is, where does everybody stand on this? And that's all.
Okay, thank you.
I think that the bill, because it addresses the use of the eminent domain for the purposes that you describe, I would love to see it get to the floor of the Senate so we can actually vote on it. And so I would be supportive of it. I know that I've been people have reached out to me on both sides of the issue, and they have concerns about ethanol, or the fact that ethanol will somehow become less viable or less profitable, or maybe the markets will be limited because of CO2, or I guess carbon tax, or I guess what's the right term I'm thinking of?
Okay, I'm gonna cut you guys off. Let's just keep our answers short because we got about 5 minutes left. Okay?
I would be in favor of it. So,
okay, thank you.
I am in favor of I'm in favor of limiting the eminent domain. I wouldn't be opposed to making it a higher threshold than 90%. I think landowners' rights are imperative, important. That is the end of it. I was actually contacted by one of the pipeline companies, and when I was on the Board of Supervisors as the chairman, and he asked me to please support the pipelines going through the private farmland, and I asked him point blank, why don't you go through the rights of way? And his direct answer without hesitation was, because this is easier. Well, too bad. That's what the rights of way are for. I think that whatever your opinion is on climate change, global warming, whatever it was, and when I was in high school, we were looking at a new freeze and whatever you call ice age, but I am adamantly in favor of the landowners' rights.
Thank you.
It's already gone through the House. I don't know if I need to. I think it went through about 75%.
So it already passed the House?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm going to give you, let's just say 30 seconds closing statements so we can get out of here on time.
All right. I'll just say briefly, shockingly, I actually read parts of Steve King's letter op-ed on the floor for that bill. But overall, I get back to like what I mentioned a couple different times about like we may not be there in 10 years, but there's a lot of industry that's down there for that. And that's, I think when we talk about the future of this state and how we get into politics, I think that's something that we should be addressing. At the end of the day, I would like to see some more security in our institutions when it comes to our democracy.
Thank
so
you.
This should be what we were doing more than listening to the special interests. Thank you.
And Representative Carlson.
2 quick comments. JD brought up the idea of money. I want you to know that I spent $79 on my campaign.
And I saw the sign.
And any and all money that was sent my way by any organization of any kind, I promptly sent it back. Now that doesn't mean there weren't some people that may have done something on their own without my knowledge, but so I agree with him 100%. We've got to figure out another way. 2, I'm 72, and this is the most challenging thing I have ever been a part of, especially having to watch the clock.
Thank you. Representative Henderson.
Yeah, I think what we just heard is a really important thing, but I don't view, I have to tell you that I've opposed a couple of lobbyists already. We still talk, they're still friendly to me. I don't have any problem with that. I think I think there's some kind of a sometimes misperception that the lobbyists are arm wrestling us down there and all that sort of thing. That's not happening. I think we have to depend upon those people in the areas of expertise that they have, because we can't be experts on everything. So it's a fine line, it's a fine balance that we have to strike, and I think by and large we're doing a pretty good job.
Thank you. Senator DeWitt.
Hey, please, let me jump in. I was not referring to this being the most challenging. Being a legislator is.
We'll ask further questions next time.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 times a week, I'm getting the question, well, what do you think? How do you like it? I went down there with eyes wide open. I did not know what to expect, and so far I haven't really been surprised, except for I am, depending on the committee, but it's pleasantly surprising for me to hear other senators come and ask my input, even as a freshman. because of probably with some of my time spent on the Board of Supervisors and secondary roads and some of the sheriff's office type of concerns, but I'll just close with that. I've been very pleasantly surprised with some of the support and some of the input that I've been asked for. It is a little bit unusual.
Thank you. And Senator Lons.
Well, yeah, it's good to be here and just get input and have this dialogue. But I agree. There's a lot of learning and there's a lot of good people that are really working hard. And it's a challenging thing to do, more challenging than I think I probably even understood. And I watched my dad do it years ago. So it's a humbling thing to serve. And there are some hard choices we have to make. And I do appreciate everyone's input and it's obviously just critical. So thanks for putting this on, and thanks for deciding to put together.
Thank you. That concludes today's town hall. Thank you to the state legislators who attended. Senator Kevin Lalonde, Senator Rocky DeWitt, Representative Ken Carlson, Representative Bob Henderson, and Representative J.D. Schulten. Thank you to the museum staff for preparing the space. Thank you to the Mayor's Youth Commission for your awesome job keeping time for us and assisting. And thank you to all of you who attended either in person or online. Please watch for more information about Candidates Forum coming up this fall for the school board and city council. Thank you.